Have you guys got all 3 questions? Make sure everyone's name is on the paper.
Like if you're like, hey,
I hope so.
It was done. Three, two, one. So go ahead and turn those papers in. Great. Oh.
Yeah, something like that.
That's what I was trying to do. Control plus. Thank you. You saw me struggling. All right. So I'll take those papers. Everybody's name is on there, right? Okay. Great. Sweet, 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 sweet. Thank you so much. So we obviously need to impress our prospective students. So I'm ready to impress them and dazzle them with the knowledge that we gain in this class. But first of all, those of you, what are your names? And I know that you come from Madison, right? You're from Northwestern, all right? Where are the rest of you from? Yes, ma'am. From where?
Plymouth.
Plymouth, Minnesota here.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
New Richmond.
What's that?
New Richmond, Minnesota.
New Richmond.
Yeah, it's like between and
Oh. Okay, cool. Right by the shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah, that's how I know it. Yes, ma'am.
I'm from Byron, Minnesota, which is just on the outskirts of Rochester.
Okay, sweet, sweet, sweet. Yes, ma'am.
Rockford, Illinois.
Rockford, Illinois. Woo! That's where, so when I was a kid, there used to be a program. What was, take a bite out of crime from Rockford, Illinois. That's where you would get your brochures or whatever. What was that thing with the dog and the trench coat? Did you guys read that? No, part of Dare program. Okay. Yes.
I'm from Rochester, Minnesota.
Okay, sweet, sweet, sweet. Mayo Clinic. Woo-hoo. So first of all, in our journals, I know folks have had some questions about why do we keep having the same questions in our journal. Anybody else? So a couple of those questions came to me, and I just wanted to share with you that what I'm trying to do is in everything that we do, kind of drive you through Bloom's taxonomy, right? Have you guys seen Bloom's taxonomy yet? Right? Yeah. So There are lots of charts and graphs out there on Bloom's taxonomy, but this is the one that I found, it just rocks my world, because it actually gives me some specific things to say, right? So the words in red, I can use that to get to both apply and to look at conceptual stuff, right? So this is the tool that I like to use as I try to build program and curriculum and all that kind of stuff. So some of those questions are designed to try to move us through those questions. And I don't know if you've noticed, but even though they're the same questions, they apply, you can apply them differently to each week's activities. At least that's what I've noticed in how on to these in your journals. So there is that. I did want to talk a little bit about this idea of race, because one of the things that the film did talk about was how these things are different. But it never, I don't know if you noticed, but did it say what race was? Was anyone able to write down a definition of race given kind of what we've talked about in those films? I certainly didn't see it in the film. I don't know that they gave us a definition. And so how would we describe race? So what would be the definition of race? Yes.
A human construct.
A human construct. What does that mean? We created it ourselves, right? We created it. So how do we know that we created this construct? It's not real. Because when I see different skin color, that looks like race. When I see different nose form or hair texture, that seems like race. What did we say that was? Remember what we said that was? Mitochondrial DNA is the same, right? We're all the same. Why are people darker, lighter, thin nose, wide nose? Why do those things happen?
Adaptation to their environment.
Adaptation to their environment. So these are adaptations. Or another way to talk about those is to talk about them as, and this is an anthropological term, clines. That there are no human races, there are clines, and that's basically just people's adaptation to their context, right? Darker skin, why? What? What's that? More sunlight present, melanin goes up. Less sunlight, what? Melanin goes down. All because of what process? What vitamin process needs to happen for human metabolism? Vitamin D, right? So it's all associated with vitamin D. So there are these ideas of clines, but there are definitions of race. There are definitions of race. Now here's the funny thing, and we talked about this a little bit. A Ford F-150 is a truck. Are people from anybody ever seen a Ford F-150, a truck? Yeah, okay. You can talk back. It's okay, right? So no matter where I go, a Ford F-150 is a Ford F-150. Anywhere on the planet. Why? Because it is a thing. It's a noun. It was made, right? Come on in. Come on in.
Are you guys physiology and intervention?
No, we are educational equity.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
You know our 418?
I don't.
Okay.
I barely found this room. So that's the case. So I want to talk about, because this idea of race is problematic, and typically when we talk about race, we try to talk about it in terms of the minority groups, but the so-called majority groups also suffer from this thing. So I was and I shared this with you before, that I was the affirmative action officer for Anoka County. And so what that means is that I had to make an account for and to the federal government for all HR practices that happen within the county, right? So the federal government became the tool that I used for training, became the place that I had to report all of our HR activities. So the federal government really, and particularly what we know is that local government is an extension of state and federal government. And if you really want to impact government, it happens at a local level, right? So the feds are all caught up in all this bureaucracy and, you know, fight against parties and all sorts of stuff. But at the local levels where you really can get stuff done. But all local activity also feeds back into the federal government. So the federal government becomes the overarching umbrella for how we are supposed to interact as agencies, right? So I said all that to say that the federal government has definitions of race. But they're very peculiar. So you can go to yourself to the EEOC.gov, look under employers and surveys and blah, 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 look at the instructions. And these are the definitions of race given by the federal government of the United States of America. Now, this is very interesting. This next part that I'm going to share with you is extremely interesting, because what do we typically say about why we make decisions? What do we make decisions based on? A good decision is made based on what? On a goal. Okay, what else? Start with F and ends in X. With facts, right? What were you going to say? Previous knowledge and understanding, right? We base it on facts, previous knowledge and understanding. We base it on scientific observations. We base it on history. We base it on all sorts of tangible, concrete things, right? That's what we base good decisions on. Now, in this form, this is how the federal government identifies human beings in the United States. So self-identification is the preferred method of identifying the race and ethnicity information necessary for the EEO-1 report. Employers are required to attempt to allow employees to use self-identification to complete the EEO-1 report. If an employee declines to self-identify, the employment records or observers' identification must be used. So if I apply for a job and they say, you know, what is your race? And I don't put a race, what does this say? What?
Somebody else has to.
Somebody else has to. So even though people say, well, I'm not going to put my race on my job application because I don't think that that's fair, that's not right. Guess what? If you don't, somebody else will. Interesting. And do you know everything about my heritage as an observer? Right? No. Just because somebody looks a certain kind of way doesn't mean they are a particular thing, right? You know, some of us may have native heritage, some of us may be biracial, triracial, or whatever, but I may not necessarily be able to see that because the observer looks from their point of view, not from the other person's point of view, right? So, long story. All right, so that's the first part. Where records are maintained, it is recommended that they be kept separate from employees, basic personnel file, or other records available to those responsible for personal decisions, blah, blah, blah. Now, this is the part that's really creepy to me, right? So this is the federal government. This is the government of the United States. This is how you get your jobs or what happens when you engage in an employment process. It says race and ethnic designations as used by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission do not denote scientific definitions of anthropological origins. What are they saying there? It's not based on what? It says race and ethnic designations as used by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission do not denote scientific definitions of anthropological origins. What are they saying? It's not based on what? It's not based on where you're from. What are they saying?
It's not arbitrary.
They're saying that it's arbitrary. Say what?
Yeah, there's just like no science to back it.
There's no science to back it up. What they're saying here, that's a fancy way of saying race and ethnicity is made up by us. If it's not based on science, what's it based on? If it's not based on anthropological study, which is a science of human beings' interactions, if it's not based on those things, what's it based on? And the funny thing is, they don't say. But it's very interesting, right? So Hispanic or Latino, a person of Cuban, Mexican, Puerto Rican, South Central America, or other Spanish culture of origin, regardless of race. I think that's very interesting. Why is it regardless of race? What do Hispanic or Latino people look like? What do they look like? Yes, ma'am.
Well, I know in South America, a lot of people look like European Americans, like the Spaniards. That's where their descendants were, and so they don't look like your stereotypical Central America, who might look more indigenous to the area, but they look quite South race as in how they look.
So, anyone ever? A very good point, right? So there are folks who look very European, and why is that? Colonialism, Spain, right? Cuba, Spain, right? I think it's interesting that Hispanic people can be as bright as day and as dark as night in the same family, right? In the same family. So to talk about them in terms of a racial group is convoluted at best. It's difficult to do at best, right? So let's move down. White, but not Hispanic or Latino, because you can be white and Hispanic and Latino. But white, Hispanic, and non-Latino, a person having any of the original, okay, so first, well, you already read it. A person having any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. You ever think of white people that way? The government does. So people from Iran, what are they? They're white. It says race in black and white. They're white. Iraqis. White. Egyptians. White. Moroccans. White. But when we think about this idea of whiteness, we don't think about those people as being white, but the government certainly does. Black or African American. A person having any original peoples of any racial group of Africa. Except obviously what? North Africa. Right? You ask an Egyptian, you say, Egyptian, are you an African? That is offensive. At least to the people that I've interacted with, right? And they laugh at it. They say, no, I'm not African. I'm Egyptian. I said, well, where is Egypt? And they say, Egypt is in Egypt. That's their answer, right? Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, any persons having any of the original peoples of Hawaii, Guam, Samoa, and the Pacific Islands. Dwayne Johnson, Barack. It's so funny. People are like, what is he? Right? Anyway, we'll keep going. Asian or non-Asian, not Hispanic or Latino. Now, this is the funniest thing, right? So here we go. Asian, non-Hispanic or Latino. A person having any of the original peoples of the Far East Asia or of the Indian subcontinent, including, for example, Cambodia, China, India, Japan, Korea, Malaysia, Pakistan, Philippine Islands, Thailand, or Vietnam. Do those people look anything alike? No, they don't look anything alike. So how can they all be in the same category called Asian? And the funny thing is, like the Philippines and I think it's Malaysia. No, I don't think it's Cambodia, but many of those were Spanish colonies. So you have Asian-looking people with Hispanic names, and many of them are Muslim. That's got to fry somebody's brain at some point. And you're like, what is going on? All right. So then we have the American Indian or Alaskan Native is a person with any of the original peoples of North and South America, including Central America, who it said. So it's those. What does "and" mean? Also, which means if you don't, what? You're not. And who maintained tribal affiliation or community attachment. So if I'm born to indigenous people from Central, South, and North America, and we do not maintain tribal affiliation, what am I? What am I? No, well, let's see what White says. Is a person having any original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Does that include? It does not. So I think these are very funny because it's not a Ford F-150. Russians. If you are from Russia, what are you? You could be Asian or what? Let's see what Asian says. Asian says the Far East Asia, or the Indian subcontinent, Cambodia, China, India, Japan, Korea. Does it say Russia? It doesn't. You are correct to say that they should fall into the Asian category, right? Why? Because where is Russia? It's in Asia, right? But why do you think that Russia specifically doesn't show up in any of these descriptions? What's that? Because they're communists, and apparently they're not human if they're communists, right? Does this really talk about human variation in a way that really makes sense? No, it's a way that the government has organized things, right? And when we turn people into things, then we can manipulate them as tools. So that's the caveat to this to the last 20 minutes that we'll spend watching this this documentary. And I wanted to, because those things are directly related to these things, right? So if the context is telling me that I am a thing or that I have to respond in a particular kind of way, it's going to impact my culture. My culture is how I've adapted to that particular context. So, white people. Again, I said I don't trust TV because I don't trust them. They got like teen mothers doing stuff, and it's just
feeling that things belong to you.
To be white is the good thing.
We don't even necessarily know someone that's not white.
People here don't see anybody of another race. So there's this barrier.
If I bring up any sort of race issue with my parents, they immediately assume that I'm demonizing them.
I didn't want to feel like I couldn't live in this house with my beliefs. When you start seeing things that are on your own, no English, you don't speak, it's gonna make you want to move away.
Any minority group, if they get a scholarship, straight white men feel like something is being taken away from them.
Kind of feels like I'm being discriminated against.
We've never had to internalize what white people have done in America, but here, you can't escape that.
I'm getting uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Hey, this is great. Let's get all uncomfortable together. I'm Jose. Sam, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. So we're doing a film for TV on what it means to be young and white.
Okay. I think we fit the role.
Yes, doing a show for MTV on what it means to be young and white.